I'm Mixer Giant and I'm going to be saying how they can do Warner Bros. 100th anniversary. I'm not saying Warner Bros. Isn't going to be doing a good job celebrating the 100th anniversary. Me just having some ideas for it. And while Warner Bros. Have been doing terrible recently, they have recently got their groove back. I'm not saying they should do all this for Warner Bros. 100th anniversary. It would be good them just announcing it and doing it next anniversary. And some of these things they really can do on their 100th anniversary. They should put some new parts at their theme park Warner Bros. World and make things a percentage off on everything there. Then them selling some really iconic Warner Bros. Merchandise that are very valuable to collectors and hardcore fans. Then put them on sale so they would still be really expensive but people would be more able to buy them. Then show their most iconic family-friendly movies on Cartoon Network, along with their original shows and best shows from all generations of Cartoon Network. And Who Framed Roger Rabbit isn't just one of the most iconic movies because of it being live action and a cartoon, it also being good because of it being a crossover between Disney and Warner Brothers. And I don't care what you say, Space Jam and Space Jam 2: A New Legacy was a good movie. It does have a lot of fans, so just them announcing a Space Jam 3 would be great to celebrate the 100th anniversary. They did leave things open-ended in the second movie, and it would be a good way to show all the good things Warner Bros. Has done over the years. For Space Jam 3's basketball guest stars, you would need the Harlem Globetrotters, and you can just use the Harlem Globetrotters that we have today in more recent years. And for the original Harlem Globetrotters that died of age, you can get voice actors to do the cartoon version of them to have the original Harlem Globetrotters in there. And Chris Paul, because of him being another one of the most iconic modern basketball stars. And they have been doing jokes with him playing other sports recently. And Shaquille O'Neal, because the original Space Jam and Space Jam 2: A New Legacy suffered from the basketball guest stars not being actors. But Son O'Neal is an actor and he has been doing advertising lately, so you wouldn't have that problem with him. Or the Cartoon Globetrotters. If you doing this, you being able to stay true to the original two Space Jam movies, but also you being able to bring something new to the table. With you making the main idea of this movie that there are legends and you need to live up to them, but you should still be able to do your own thing, and that you can make your dreams come true. Which is why you should use these basketball guest stars because of this idea going perfectly with them. Because Sion O'Neill has done so many things that he is living proof that you can make your dreams come true. And the modern Harlem Globetrotters trying to live up to the potential of the original Harlem Globetrotters, who you would have as cartoons here. And it would go well with the Looney Tunes because of them being cartoons and dreams go awesome with cartoons. And with them being able to do a bunch of jokes with these guest stars specifically, and it would be good what this movie is trying to say in real life with the original Space Jam and the Space Jam 2: A New Legacy movie. Then for the main plotline you would do in Space Jam 3 is that some thrown away Warner Bros. Original character ideas are angry for being thrown away by Warner Bros. And try to get revenge on them by destroying the whole Warner Bros. Company. Because of us finding out in Space Jam 2: A New Legacy about the Cyberverse, the multiverse of Warner Bros. Media, and the thrown away Warner Bros. Ideas would know that they would be destroyed too, them just not caring about it because of them already being forgotten and thrown away by Warner Bros. And because of them wanting revenge on Warner Bros. So much, them being willing to make sure everyone dies with them. The Looney Tunes would not want this to happen because then they would be destroyed along with the rest of the multiverse of Warner Bros. Media. So because of the Looney Tunes fighting against them, and because of them being so crazy, them deciding this over a game of basketball, also because of the thrown away original idea characters of the Looney Tunes show's idea, Then to fix some of the mistakes done in the original Space Jam 2 A New Legacy movie, you can make it at the beginning there being a bunch of Bugs Bunny being bummed out because he misses his friends and family from the Looney Tunes show, and it's not all that great being real. With this, you'll be able to say in the movie about what's real and what's not, and that it is good to be real, and that the Looney Tunes are real because of them being real to their fans and because of them having emotions. With you being able to say that at the end of the movie. And with him meeting up for some basketball stars at a kids' event at Warner Bros. Company, who would be the ones I already mentioned. And because of Bugs Bunny staying at LeBron James' house, that's how he knows the basketball guest stars because LeBron James played against them in the real life basketball game since the last movie. And they actually get sucked into Toon World too. Then it also starting out with the tech guys at the Warner Brothers Company putting Bugs Bunny back into the Looney Tunes show by using algorithms programming from the leftovers of it, because of them needing one of their most iconic characters and the mascot of their company back into one of their most iconic shows and one of their most iconic character franchises. And also for a big fat I'm sorry for the whole algorithm thing. Then something going wrong with it, and that's how the Warner Brothers thrown away original character ideas got into the cyberverse. It would be a flawed movie. The first half would focus on setting up the plotline for the rest of the movie, and the second half would focus on the big basketball game between them and them doing it. But before the big basketball game between them, we would see the Looney Tunes and the thrown away Warner Bros. Original character ideas fight each other in a Squatch and Stretch cartoon way throughout the cyberverse and the other forms of Warner Bros. Media to show the Looney Tunes doing more of their own thing in the movie, and doing the things you love the Looney Tunes for in the movie, which would help them come to the idea of starting it over a game of basketball. But then the Looney Tunes characters would get tired and exhausted after it, so them needing to rest and re-energize after it, so then they would use the other Warner Bros. Characters who would find out about the fight because of it going through the dimension and you being able to do a quick four-way line about a joke about them just happening to leak into their dimension that they were in at the time. For the first half of the game, they'd use different teams made out of different Warner Bros. Characters. Then for the second half of the game, they'd use a team completely made out of the Looney Tunes characters. And for the team members, you need Juniper Lee, Jeremy Rex, Zack Saturday, and Ben 10 to represent the Cartoon Network team because of Cartoon Network representing a huge part of Warner Brothers. And these shows are either underrated crossover with Ben 10 or an iconic part of Cartoon Network. So they would go well together and you would be showing all the parts of Cartoon Network. And Scooby-Doo to represent Hanna-Barbera, and because he's one of Cartoon Network's most iconic character franchises in general. And Tom and Jerry to represent the cartoon part of Warner Brothers, and because of them being similar to the Looney Tunes. And you need the Animaniacs, Tiny Toons, and Freakazoid in there, because the Animaniacs are also Squatch and Stretch cartoon characters, and they used to cross over with the Looney Tunes all the time. So did Tiny Toons and Freakazoid, so you should have them in there too, with them. And you'd also need Jingle Bell in there because of her being one of the best creations of Paul Dini. One of the reasons why Tiny Toons and the Animaniacs shows were so good. In the Squatch and Stretch cartoon characters team before using the actual Looney Tunes team. For Elmer Fudd, he should look how he did in the original episode he showed in Looney Tunes cartoons. For Lola Bunny, you should make it her being a combination of the Lola Bunny from the original Space Jam movie and the Lola Bunny from the original Looney Tunes reboot. With her being more serious and straight-faced than Bugs Bunny, but with her still being able to be lighthearted and to do jokes. And when she does do jokes, it being the kind of jokes from the original Looney Tunes reboot. You should also have Tina Duck in there because of her being Daffy Duck's girlfriend. And since Space Jam did so many good things for Lola Bunny, it would be good if you did it for Tina Duck too. And Petunia Pig because he's Porky Pig's girlfriend. You can also do a scene where the Looney Tunes predator and hunters see into the future and see that they finally caught their prey and ate them, to explain why they'll never stop trying to get them. But then the prey Looney Tunes characters will see that they use that to eat the hunters and predator Looney Tunes characters, and that's why they'll never stop trying not to get eaten by them. Then we'd see the nerd like cheering in the crowd for the Looney Tunes team. Then they would help the Looney Tunes team by stealing the skills from one of the other basketball teams. Then by playing against the thrown away Warner Bros. Original characters ideas. And playing as the main team to help the Looney Tunes team, the Toon Squad. And you should also have the Animaniacs and Freakazoid mess with the commentators and help with the game, by them being the announcers and the play-by-play players for the game, before them being a part of the Squatch and Stretch cartoon team, which will have some of the Looney Tunes characters before the Toon Squad goes in. Then when we see the big basketball game, we see that it would be a combination of the usual basketball games from the original Space Jam movie, and it being combined with it being like a video game from the Space Jam 2: A New Legacy movie, along with there being traps on the basketball court and with the Looney Tunes doing some crazy Squatch and Stretch cartoon thing. And we'd still see a lot of cameos from the Warner Bros. Characters in the audience in the background, with it being more clear and with you more being able to see the Warner Bros. Characters. Then at the halftime break scene, which is a highlight of any sports movie, the basketball guest stars would say to the Dream Team, the team of Warner Bros. Characters before the Squatch and Stretch cartoon team, that King Kong, you need to get back on defense, Batman, you're not a one-man team out there, and Iron Giant needs to move and get out more. Then Bugs Bunny, being depressed and bummed out, would say, "We just have no chemistry. Basketball isn't a game of individuals. It's people coming together to serve a greater purpose, a cause, a family." Then you would do the Squatch and Stretch cartoon team with some of the Looney Tunes characters. Then you would do the Looney Tunes team, the Toon Squad. And the Toon Squad would also have all the basketball guest stars. Then in the end, Bugs Bunny would do the craziest Squatch and Stretch cartoon things. Then they would win in the end. Then the movie would end with Bugs Bunny going back to Toon World with the Looney Tunes, which is what he wanted in the last movie. So if you do it in this movie, not only would it be a happy ending, but it would be a great way for this movie to go out with a bang. Then the Harlem Globetrotters, the modern ones, would say goodbye to the original cartoon Harlem Globetrotters, and the original cartoon Harlem Globetrotters would say to the modern versions, them being proud of them and glad that they are continuing on their legacy. Then the present day Harlem Globetrotters would find out that while it is good them honoring their legacy, it is also good them doing their own thing. Chris Paul would be playing a basketball game against another basketball team. Then Shaquille O'Neal would keep doing his own thing at a kids' charity event. Then Cartoon Network would do a good version of the crossover Nexus, with it showing all the parts of Cartoon Network and it not just being a bunch of cameos, it being focused on the main parts of Cartoon Network and the actually good parts of Cartoon Network, and it being a 4-hour animated movie, not an 11-minute episode, with them using the original versions of the shows with their original voice actors and the original way they were animated. You don't need to get the original creators of the shows, just someone who is an actual fan of them and someone who's actually good at animation. Throughout the movie, we'd see flashbacks to Shark's origin story to make him a good villain. You would need to make it that because of his family, he loved traveling around his dimension, but him hating that him and his family were treated badly by the planets they went to, until him meeting the love of his life and him having his own family with her, until his family and his dimension were destroyed at the end of time, which is how he got his powers. So him deciding to absorb other dimensions and their heroes so he can become even more powerful so he can bring back his original dimension. Then we would travel around different Cartoon Network shows and see them fighting against him, stopping different ones of his evil plans around the multiverse of Cartoon Network shows. until them finding out about him and them defeating him. The first ones we would see is the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy and Foster's home for imaginary friends, fighting against them with their powers and different things there. Then we'd see Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory and Johnny Test from Johnny Test fighting against Strife's Army too. And you'd also need to pay tribute to the 80s and 90s part of Cartoon Network, with He-Man and in the Masters of the Universe, the Thundercats, Captain Planet and the Planeteers, and G.I. Joe fighting against these things too. Then at the end, Professor Paradox would come and get them too. Then it would also need to be each one being from the original rebooted version of them. And with the Planeteers being more like Power Rangers, you'd also use this to show that some of the Cartoon Network villains are working together with Strife, alongside the gum adventures of Billy and Mandy and Foster's home for imaginary friends. Then afterwards, Dexter and Johnny Test would hang out and talk about the similarities to each other but also the differences, to show how different and similar Cartoon Network shows are in general throughout the generations. This would show how different yet similar each Cartoon Network show is throughout the generations. Then another Cartoon Network character would come to them to get their help to join their team to defeat Strife. Then we'd see Juniper Lee, because this is just a shot in the arm for her to come back with a new season. Generator Rex, because he is seriously underrated, and he also crossed over with Ben 10 before, so he would be perfect for this. Zack Saturday, because more people really should know about his show. And he would get along great with Generator Rex since they both have similar personalities and both crossed over with Ben before. And Ben 10 because of him being used to multiversal stuff and time travel stuff. And because of him being one of the biggest franchises in Cartoon Network, and because of him being one of Cartoon Network's most iconic shows. This would show a more underrated part of Cartoon Network, and it would also show the cartoon teenage superhero part of Cartoon Network. Then it would turn out that it was Professor Paradox getting these guys together in order to defeat Strife, and he would get Ben too. Then we would go to Adventure Time after Finn and Jake has reincarnated, and regular show after they got their happy endings with their friends and families. And the amusement of Gumball, we would see that they're fighting against these things too. This would show the good part of the modern Cartoon Network shows. Then Professor Paradox would come and get Finn to help them defeat Strife. Then for the Cartoon Network Lego shows, we would see Ninjago, Masters Ninjutsus, Nexo-Knights, Chima, and Mixos fighting against Strife's army. Then Professor Paradox would come to get one of them for the team to defeat Strife. The first half of the movie is you showing the main plotline of the movie and you showing them coming together to try and defeat Strife. The second half is you showing them defeating Strife and you showing where the Cartoon Network shows continue on from this. Then for the shows that are known for being on Cartoon Network but isn't owned by Cartoon Network specifically, but are some of Cartoon Network's most iconic shows, you would show My Little Trouble Pony and the Transformers fighting against Strife's army, and you would need all their human allies and use the most iconic versions of them from each Transformers show on Cartoon Network. And it'd be awesome if you had Sorry from Transformers Animated in there and the Terrans from Transformers Earthspark bond over them being organic yet still Cybertronian. Yeah, I know Earthspark is Nickelodeon, but Transformers is so much more iconic for showing on Cartoon Network, so this would be a great way for Cartoon Network to take it back. We would see the Transformers fighting against the Decepticons, but then they would work together to start Strife's armies. Then they would work together to blow up the machine Strife was going to use to destroy the whole Cartoon Network multiverse. Then Professor Paradox would come to get one of them for the team they are making to defeat Strife. Then we'd see Mad Hatter still fighting against Tanrock's villains while also fighting against Strife's armies, and him being introduced to a whole new part of the multiverse, and him going through them to try to save those worlds too. Because this would show there being some villains like Tenrock who just see this as an opportunity to get what they want. And those other parts of the multiverse we would see him go through would be the Power Players dimension, where we would see them fighting against a new main toy villain of the season, and Jade Artemis dimension, where we would see her fighting against the Crimson Lord. This would show the 3D Souls part of Cartoon Network, then Professor Paradox would come to get Mad Hatter. Then we'd see Scooby-Doo and Tom and Jerry working together with the Looney Tunes fighting against Stripe's army in a Squatch and Stretch cartoon way. Then Professor Paradox would come and get Scooby-Doo. Then we would see the whole team. Some of them would have to stay back to fight against Stripe's army, while the main 8 team would need to fight against Stripe himself, with each one representing a main part of the Warner Brothers company, and them needing it in the movie in order to defeat Strife. Bumblebee would represent Transformers, and for the shows that show up on Cartoon Network but is not linked to Cartoon Network specifically, like My Little Trouble Pony and DreamWorks Dragons, and him representing the Transformers franchise in general, and he has had a big role in Transformers shows lately instead of Optimus. Mad Hatter would represent the 3D Souls part of Cartoon Network, and he would be perfect for this because he already goes around the multiverse all the time in his usual show. So he would do this to save the multiverse and to save his part of the multiverse in general. Then Zune would represent the modern part of Cartoon Network shows and how it managed to rise up from the ashes and get its groove back. Bugs Bunny would represent Warner Bros. In general, and the Squatch and Stretch cartoon show part of Warner Bros. And Cartoon Network. Scooby-Doo would be there to represent the Hanna-Barbera part of Warner Bros. And Cartoon Network. And so his friends in the Mystery Gang won't die. And Tom and Jerry would be there to represent the cartoon show part of Warner Bros. And Cartoon Network in general. Then Ben 10 would be there because him being one of Cartoon Network's most iconic shows in general, one of Cartoon Network's longest running franchises, so he's there to represent Cartoon Network in general. And because he also already usually goes to other parts of the multiverse and time travels too. And because Ben 10 already being extremely powerful, and because of him fighting against godlike supervillains all the time, and Mordecai from Regular Show, because of them already dealing with world-ending events and universe-ending events all the time in Regular Show, and him being able to relate to some of the other cartoon heroes about this being usual for them, and how important it is them doing it, and for the other cartoon heroes, and him being able to relate to the other cartoon heroes about how this is a fish out of water story for them and it's kind of taking them out of their depth. Then in the end they would defeat Strife and stop him from destroying the Cartoon Network multiverse. If them doing this for the good version of the crossover nexus, it would be a much better use of the Cartoon Network shows, and it would show Cartoon Network throughout the generations. And it does honor the continuity of other Cartoon Network shows while still setting things up for the future Cartoon Network shows. Then also Cartoon Network could post fan art of their most iconic and best shows. You can even make it that Cartoon Network posts on all their social medias for the fans to post their fan art. And if it's already good, Cartoon Network will post it themselves on all their social media. And if it isn't good, Cartoon Network will make it good into even better fan art. And do fan art of all their Cartoon Network characters together, like how they did for their 25th anniversary and for their 30th anniversary. Then them also doing some commercials about the Cartoon Network characters interacting with each other and hanging out together. Then for Multiverses, Multiverses is a fighting game with the Warner Bros. Characters like Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl and Super Smash Bros. It's a fighting game with the Warner Bros. Characters. Could you think of a better way for them to celebrate their 100th anniversary? I mean, if they did all this for different seasons of the original Multiverses game, think how much they can do with a sequel to the game. You just need to do a big upgrade for the game until then, and make it not based on the loot box thing so much, and for there to be even more different skins for the characters already there, and there being new power-ups, and even more characters in the game, the characters fans have been wanting in the game for quite some time now. Like King Kong and Godzilla from the Monsterverse, with you being able to summon the other monsters from the Monsterverse, and Beetlejuice with him using his ghost powers to fight in the game. And since they recently did a sequel to the original Beetlejuice movie, now would be the perfect time to cast in on it, and get people hyped for the third Beetlejuice movie. And since there was already a cartoon version of Beetlejuice, you can just do a 3D model of that version of him. And for Megas XR, he would be a giant in the game like the Iron Giant, with him being able to go up against him perfectly, and Megas XR does have a lot of weapons for them to use in the game. Then for Samurai Jack, you would just use his sword fighting skills, and it would be good because he came back for his series finale. And you'd also need He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, G.I. Joe, and Captain Planet and the Planet Tears. Because this just being the shot in the arm that He-Man and the Thundercats need to get a good live-action movie, and for the Captain Planet and the Planet TAs to get a good rebooted version of them, and for there to be a good 3D animated Thundercats reboot cartoon show. Then you would also need the Animaniacs in there because of this being a Warner Bros. Video game and these are the Warners, and because you should take advantage of the reboot before it ending, and to help the reboot go out with a bang. And also Freakazoid because of him being similar to the Warners, and Jingle Bell because of him being similar to Freakazoid. Then you would also need some Mad Max characters to represent that part of Warner Bros. And because of you already referencing every other movie in the Warner Bros. Franchise in multiverses, and they did recently do some things with it in Space Jam 2: A New Legacy. And you can even make it, because of it, there being some different skins for Bugs Bunny and LeBron James. And there being post-apocalyptic wasteland alternate skins for the other guys too. Then for the Wicked Witch of the West, she would have flying monkeys and should use her magic powers. And the fans have been wanting some Breaking Bad characters in multiverses for a while now, so they should do that too. With them fighting with giant machine guns and bombs, like in Breaking Bad, the TV show. And you should also have the Kids Next Door in it, with you using their good fighting styles and their 2x4 technology in it. And Blue from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, with him being able to turn into the Blue Super Dude, with him being able to use his Bear Claw Go and his Powerball Maze, with some of the other alternative versions of the characters from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, an Imaginary Man and his sister, and Grim from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Grim is the physical embodiment of death, and he can do supernatural things with his scythe. So it would be perfect you being able to fight as him in the game. And you'd also need Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. He would be able to use a dodgeball robot and his giant robot, and to summon the superheroes from his show, and to get help from his family in order to form a giant robot to fight against someone in the game. Then for Giant Test, you being able to use weapons from the lab and Giant X to fight in the game. And with Ben 10, there would be different skins in the game, so you being able to play as Ben, Gwen 10, Ben 23, and Albedo, with the look and color of each alien changing and with each skin. And with Albedo, you being able to turn into ultimate aliens. And Jade Armor, so more people would know about the show. And she can just use her elemental and animal powers and good fighting style to fight in the game. And Scooby-Doo because you already have Sag and Velma in the game.